Chapter 2. Bear Walker rolled over on his bunk and worked up an eyelid in time to see a pack rat scampering out the front door. It was carrying a spoon.
"Damn," he mumbled. "Gotta do something about that sumbitch one of these days."
He stretched and yawned and tended to an itch in his whiskers. Now, what was it he'd just been dreaming about? Something with a real good feel to it. Something cool. Trout. That was it. Fresh trout. He licked his lips and smiled. How long it had been since he'd last went fishing. Too damn long. Grouse, venison, bear meat, beans and biscuits were all well and good for winter grub when a body had a need of extra fuel, but with the mercury inching towards the top of the thermometer, that menu turned a mite weighty. Bear wiped sweat out of his eyes, tended to an itch in his groin, and idly wondered if the departing rat had traded fleas for the last of his spoons. He eyed the table under his north-facing window. A spruce cone now rested atop a tin plate crusted with the remains of last night's dinner. This came as no surprise. He and the rat had been trading silverware and spruce cones for half the month of August. The yellow sunrise promised no relief from the sweltering heat, but there was the feeling of change in the air, as if storm clouds were gathering somewhere beyond the horizon. Bear rubbed the sleep from his eyes and the sweat from his neck, and decided today was as good as any to treat himself to an overdue fishing trip. Summers were short in the Okanagan Highlands, especially up close to the Canadian border. Sometimes they weren't more than 2 months long. Most times they were shorter. This one had been about average. Snow in July, and 98 in the shade 2 weeks into August. A day or two from now, the weather could just as easy change back again. Considering his advanced years and the unpredictable nature of the weather, Bear figured that if he was of a mind to do something, he'd best do it while he had the chance. And today, he sure as hell felt like going fishing. With no eating utensils left to tie him to the table, he leisurely downed a half-dozen warmed-over sourdough biscuits and a pot of black coffee as he rooted around in the back half of his cabin for fishing gear. By the time he'd located hooks and line, taken up his ancient Henry rifle, and headed down Bodie Mountain, aimed for Granite Creek, the mercury had climbed 10 degrees. There were closer streams than Granite Creek, most of them plugged with beaver dams. There were even a couple of little lakes. But Bear's big, well-seasoned body hungered for the dankness of Granite Creek, every bit as much as his mouth watered for fresh fish. There was something to be said for living high on a mountain where a man could look down on the world, but for the fragrance of mint and the rejuvenating effects of cold water, not to mention the flavor of fresh-caught trout, Granite Creek was damn hard to beat. It meant a piece of walking, but for a man with nothing to do and all day to do it in, a 14-mile hike was as good a way as any to spend the day. It wasn't until hours later, after he'd enjoyed his fill of fish, that the idea occurred to him to wander downstream to the head of the canyon on Granite Creek. Walleye's cabin was less than a quarter-mile due south of the canyon pocket, and it had been a while since Bear paid him a visit. Not that Bear held any fondness for Walleye. He didn't. The man was a nuisance at the best of times, a troublemaker who thrived on fertilizing other folks' headaches almost as much as he enjoyed cultivating grief all on his own. There were times, back at the beginning of their long acquaintance, when Bear had given serious thought to airing the old goat's hide with a bullet or two, just to drain out some of the spite. But he'd given up on that idea, seeing as Walleye's heart was too small to hit, even at close range. Bear settled instead for dropping by from time to time to nip the man's enthusiasms before they had a chance to blossom into serious misery. These little visits always annoyed the hell out of Walleye, which never failed to give Bear some small but certain pleasure.